It was early spring of 1960. An alien race called Trance had made a contact to the United States of America. They approached the free world in peace, and the sole purpose of their arrival was to expand their knowledge about the universe. President John F. Kennedy welcomed his guests beyond the stars, and on one day he and some other members of the cabinet were invited to dine to Trindle's ship. After long necessary safety precautions, tests and several handshakes later, the President of the United States ascended to the space. "Mr. President, are you ready to go?" asked Agent Bolden and knocked softly on the President's cabin's door. President Kennedy looked at his reflection from the ship's window and straightened his tie. He smiled to himself when his fingers touched the fine fabric. Jackie had chosen that tie for him to bring good luck and safe return. It had been a rough decision to make when the President had chosen the fortunate few who would accompany him. The First Lad, Why, had protested for being left out, but eventually she agreed to stay in the safety of the White House with their daughter. Besides, she was heavily pregnant with their second child, and after appealing to that fact she submitted to her husband's will. "Coming." President Kennedy replied and stepped outside. The spaceship where the Trindles had invited them was vast. It could easily accommodate 1,000 individuals plus heavy machinery for field studies and exploration. From the day one, the Trindles had expressed their wish to study Earth and learn the ways of its nations. For payment of this opportunity, the Trindles offered a scientific alliance between themselves and humans. As a token of a goodwill, they were willing to share their knowledge about space travel, which the members of NASA were more than willing to obtain. Back in the White House, the members of the cabinet were eager to take the offer. This could be the very booster they needed to win the space race before it had even started. President Kennedy saw no downsides in this deal if the Trindles would keep their word, which he wasn't too sure about. "We don't know anything about these beings, so I would tread with caution," he remarked on one late evening when the cabinet had gathered. There were few who did agree with the president, and eventually, they made a compromise. They would not agree to anything before they were absolutely sure that these beings were not on a warpath. The captain of the Trindle ship, who introduced himself as Jadar Katido, didn't blame the president about his skepticism, and after a few weeks of careful familiarizing from both sides, the Trindles were allowed to conduct their experiments on US soil. As president, Kennedy was walking on the long silver corridor. He could not but wonder the brilliance of these beings. They had reached such heights which his people could only dream about. Everything in the ship seemed to work seamlessly. Troops of artificially intelligent robots, or synths as the Trindles called them, kept the machines running while the Trindles themselves occupied the controls and more demanding tasks. Water, oxygen and food were carefully recycled in endless loop of use, cleansing and reuse. Nothing was ever wasted or thrown away. Being in their ship made President Kennedy feel that he had been wrenched far into a future, cleaner future where the nature and home were the same thing. The Trindles respected all life, and it did show in their habits. President Kennedy learned that Trindles took only what they needed to survive and then returned the gifts back to their planet. They respected their home world like a child respects his parents, and most of the time they did refer their planet as their mother. Their detailed depiction of their home reminded the president about Judy Garland's song "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." How wonderful that world must have looked like. Soon he and his entourage arrived at the dining room where the Captain Katido and some other officers were waiting. After a tasty meal, President Kennedy felt the oncoming urge to have a cigarette, and he asked where he could have a smoke. Captain Katido got up from his seat and started to lead the president to a more suitable place. As they were walking inside of a massive glass tube, President Kennedy saw how the Earth's moon was slowly passing by the ship. "I have never seen the moon so close," he said in awe. "The nature is the most beautiful thing to look at, Mr. President," Captain Katido replied softly. Just when they were about to reach the ventilation area, bright silver lights were turned off to blood red. Soft humming of the ship ceased and ear-piercing sirens started to scream. "A hostile vessel spotted. A hostile vessel spotted," the alarm warned. Right away Captain Cotito contacted the lookout via a strange-looking contraption which was in his wrist and asked what was going on. A small hologram image of the lookout appeared from Captain's wrist and he said, "A fully armed Zadson warship is approaching. Have they made any contact?" "No sir, they are about to fire at us. Transport us to the bridge at once," the captain commanded, and in the blink of an eye both he and President Kennedy were at the ship's bridge. The lookout, first mate and the rest of the crew tried to contact the other ship which was shooting laser beams towards the Trindle ship. As the beams hit the whole ship trembled, and blue sparks started to rain from the control panels. Finally, the other ship agreed to open the video message channel and the captain started to speak. "This is Captain Cotito of the ship Nulmeria. Please abort hostile activities." Then President Kennedy saw how the ugliest looking face appeared to the vast computer screen of the bridge. The closest thing he could understand its looks was that it had an enormous fly's eyes and wide jaws of a beetle. Then it started to speak, but President Kennedy wasn't able to make any sense of the strange yips and yaps it made. "We have done nothing to provoke your people, so please abort the hostilities," Captain Cotito repeated. Then that awful mixture of a fly beetle turned its gaze towards the president and another flood of aggressive gibberish followed. "He and his party are our guests, and his people have nothing what you could want, so leave them alone," Captain explained. From the aggressive response proceed, and Kennedy concluded that this hostile alien had no intentions to pull back. "They are about to embark our ship," the lookout shouted. "Put the protective shields on immediately and prepare to evacuate the humans back to Earth," Captain Cotito ordered. "Don't you have any firearms?" President Kennedy asked. "No, we don't. We avoid violence at all costs," Captain replied. "But they will kill you all." "I know, but we don't spill any blood." While they were still speaking, the Zadson P opened fire and crippled the protective shields. Nulmeria trembled violently and Captain Cotito teleported himself and President Kennedy to evacuation block. Unfortunately, the Zadson troops had already invaded Nulmeria and killed several members of the crew and the Secret Service. "You wanna play dirty?" cried Agent Bolden and emptied his service weapon to the last remaining Zadson soldier. Although the invaders had a thick armor, the lead bullets did pierce it, and before the Zadson soldier died, it shot the Agent Bolden and wounded the captain. "Quickly, Mr. President, into the pod," Captain urged while he was holding his bleeding abdomen. "Oh my God, you are really hurt," President Kennedy lamented when he saw the captain's wounds. "Don't worry about me. I must send you far away, so they cannot find you, or that planet," Captain objected and tied President Kennedy to the seat. "What are you talking about? You mean the Earth? There is no time to explain. We must abandon the ship now." With his last remaining strength, Captain Cotito closed the pod's lid and executed the emergency launch. The evacuation pod was catapulted to the space with such a force that President Kennedy lost his consciousness. Before the darkness took him, he saw a softly glowing millipede-like being crawling out from the captain's ear. He was far too much in pain to care what he was seeing, and then, all went black. President Kennedy's escape through space was long, and silent. As he was hanging from the seat belts, there was a full panic in the White House. NASA had been watching closely the presidential visit to the alien spaceship, and when they had seen the attack of the Zadsons and the destruction of the Trindles, they assumed that none survived. Vice President Lyndon Johnson gasped when he heard the news, but he composed himself quickly and ordered the First Lady and her child to house arrest. Nobody wasn't allowed to speak to them or tell what had just happened. The situation had to be kept under control. Luckily, the visiting members of the cabinet had managed to escape back to Earth, and they were interrogated. Johnson wanted to have the entire picture of the events to be painted front of him before he would do his next move. When he received the full report from the interrogation, Bobby Kennedy stormed into his office and demanded to know what the hell was going on. Johnson tried to dismiss the younger Kennedy, but it was in vain. "I cannot tell you before we have all the information in our hands," Johnson tried to avoid. "Bullshit. You know perfectly well what happened up there, so spit it out, Bobby demanded. It seemed that it was impossible to avoid Bobby Kennedy, so Johnson replied. Plainly put, we are not yet sure, but it seems likely that Jack Kennedy is no more. His words made Bobby to step back. What? He asked in disbelief. According to NASA, some other alien ship appeared next to the Trindle ship and blew it up. None of the Secret Service agents survived, and Jack was not among the few survivals. Johnson continued. It took few seconds for Bobby to digest what he had just heard. Do you have a picture or eyewitness testimony of Jack's dead body? No. But then you cannot know for sure that he died. Bobby Kennedy roared. No one could survive from that blast. The attackers could have abducted him. Believe what you want, but in my opinion, Jack Kennedy is now floating among the other heavenly bodies. It's President Kennedy for you. Backstabber, Bobby shouted and squeezed his hand into a fist. He wanted so badly to punch that smug old man into his face, but he had to contain himself. Puffing with rage, Bobby marched out from Johnson's office. He needed to find Jackie and Caroline. And where you think you are going? Johnson asked. That is none of your business, Bobby replied. The First Lady is not available right now, so I suggest you wait. Oh, really? Watch me, Bobby dared. Then all of a sudden the White House security gripped Bobby and started to drag him away. You bastards, let me go. I am President's brother. Oh, that you say you are. Well, I don't have a brother called Robert, Johnson duly noted as he watched how Bobby Kennedy was dragged away. After long episode of dreamless sleep, President Kennedy opened his eyes. He was having a terrible headache and he felt dizzy. Bright lights were surrounding him, and he had cover his eyes. Nothing made sense. Just few minutes ago everything had been fine, and then he had ended up in the middle of a crossfire. The security measures had been taken to the ultimate level and still they had failed. How could that have happened? Then he heard a soft sound of footsteps and saw shadowy figures behind of his fingers. Is there anyone in here? Could you please turn the lights off? He asked. Finally, the lights were dimmed a bit and President Kennedy was able to see once more. As he focused his gaze, he saw three tall figures which he hadn't seen before. They looked like somewhat of humans, but they had a third eye on their foreheads, forearms, and they had no mouths. At first, President Kennedy didn't know what to expect from these beings, but then a vast wave of memories was flooding into his mind. These beings were Thales, from a planet Zumuratania, which located in Carvier's constellation. They had been close allies with Trindles for Centauri. And them both shared common passions to learn more about the universe, and keeping its less fortunate inhabitants out from harm's way. Thales were telepathic beings, who had long ago mastered the arts of psychokinesis and psionics. President Kennedy had no idea how he could know all of these things, since the Trindles were the only alien species he had met. Slowly he got up from the hospital bed and asked where he was. This is an international space station, Themis. We are the medic of this station. I am Dr. Dumas and here are my colleagues, Drs. Aris and Hava. It's 10th of June and it's 9:30 p.m. on Earth's time if you are interested to know, replied the tallest Thede. As Dumas was talking his voice was deep, calming, and it resonated softly in President's head. He had never experienced such of a way of communication, and in other circumstances he would have started to doubt his sanity. What happened? How did I end up in here, and where Captain Catino is? President Kennedy continued frantically. Don't you remember what happened? The tone of the voice had changed, so President Kennedy assumed that one of the other two Thades had joined to the conversation, but he had no idea which one. No, I don't. President Kennedy replied and rubbed his forehead. The Zadson ship attacked upon you, and the Trindles. Few of your people managed to escape besides of you and the captain. The escape pod which you were in had been programmed to fly straight to us, which we consider to be quite odd, since you belong to planet Earth, Dumas replied. Unless, started a third voice. What? The others asked. Unless the captain directed the pod to the station for a reason. By the way, where is he? President Kennedy asked and looked around of himself. There were few beds in that clinic, but they were all empty. There was a moment of silence before Dumas spoke again. His wounds were too great. I'm sorry. No, this is not right. I don't belong in here. This cannot be happening. I want back home. President Kennedy cried and got up to his feet. His head was about to explode from aching, and sudden burst of violent anxiety took over his mind. Pain pierced his every muscle like a burning needle as he moved. Unexplainable sense of fear squeezed his chest like a tight rope. He wanted to run. He was like scared animal in a cage. Please calm down. Dumas calmed the president. He took a firm, but gentle grip on President Kennedy's torso and put him back to the bed. The three Fedes looked at each other, and since there was a long silence, President Kennedy guessed that these beings were having a long debate about something which he was not included. Please tell us what your latest memory is before you got in here. Try to remember. Even the smallest detail could be important. Dumas asked and lowered himself onto President Kennedy's level. President Kennedy took a deep breath and pushed away the anxiety which has overtook him. Then he closed his eyes and returned back to the numb area in his memories. I was inside of the escape pod with the captain. He was bleeding so much. What happened then? He executed the emergency launch and then he collapsed. Go on. The launch was so sudden and such of intense force almost squeezed the life out of me. Did you see anything else? President Kennedy sighed and tried to keep himself calm. I remember seeing something white millipede looking thing which had a glow of its own, he replied. Again, the Fedes were silent, and their silence made President Kennedy uncomfortable. He hated to be left out from things which clearly concerned him. Then Dumas spoke. What you told us made us to suspect that the good captain knew he was about to die, and he needed to save his youth. The death of an youth is always a tragedy, but it seemed that captain wanted to protect his youth till the end and sent it to us. When President Kennedy heard the name of the creature, he knew right away what it was. Without of hesitation, he said, youths belong to the home world of Trindles. They evolved in the warm underground springs about 5 billion years ago. Long ago, when the first tribes of Trindles started to set up settlements, they first discovered youths. Soon they were worshipped as the divine voice of their planet when the first shamans let them to settle down into their brains. Eventually, all Trindle clans acquired an youth which lived inside the chief. Gift which the youths granted to Trindles was a source of infinite experience of its previous hosts. All memories which the host had experienced were stored into this creature, and when the previous host passed, it just took another one of its choosing. The choosing ceremonies are important events in the families, and if there are plenty of potential heirs, the youth chooses only one of them to be its next host. Dumas nodded and pointed out, all knowledge has its price. Since we now truly believe that the captain granted his youth to you, you must feed it and keep it alive, since it may have some vital information. What do I need to do? This being needs plenty of nutrition, which you may not have enough in your blood to sustain the both of you. You need plenty of oils, sugar and oxygen, which we can provide here at the station's clinic. In the meantime, try to figure out what was so important that the Captain Gatito was willing to break their ancient tradition by giving his youth to you. After the Fedes had arranged nutrition therapy to President Kennedy, he asked one more thing. Is there a way I could reach to my people back in Earth and inform them that I am safe? I will speak to the captain of the station and ask if she can arrange something, Dumas promised. Then President Kennedy was left alone, and with this promise in his mind, he let the soft humming of the space station to lull himself back to rest. In her lavishly decorated bedroom, the First Lady Jackie Kennedy walked anxiously in circles. It was close to midnight, but she wasn't able to sleep. She had no idea what was going on. NASA had watched closely the president's visitation to an alien ship, and now something had happened. Jackie had demanded to know the answers, but nobody said a word. She wasn't allowed to see or speak to anyone. Lyndon Johnson had just ordered her into her quarters without telling her why. As Jackie looked at her little utter Caroline, cold fear touched her heart. Her little girl slept soundly in her bed, without a care in the world. What if something bad had happened to Jack? How she could tell her little Caroline, and tears started to run down on her cheeks when she felt a soft movement inside of her womb. And their new baby. Jack didn't even have a chance to see him. Quickly Jackie turned her head away and wiped her tears. She had to stay strong for Caroline's sake. Horrible scenes filled her mind, and it was hard to her not to cry out loud. She didn't want the girl to get upset, so she bit her tongue so hard that she tasted blood. Every passing minute felt like a lifetime. The silence was driving her crazy. Jackie wanted to get out from her prison, but a Secret Service agent was blocking the door. In her despair she sat down and prayed in her mind. Dear Lord, let no harm come to my husband. Please give me a sign that he is alright. Right at that moment switchboard of the White House go. An extraordinary call. As the lady on duty answered to the phone, she heard a man's voice saying, "This is the President of the United States." "Yeah, right, and I am the Queen Mom," she replied. "Listen to me. I am John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and I am trying to reach the First Lady or the Vice President Johnson. The President doesn't call into this number." The lady pointed blankly. "He is calling now, and he is ordering you to connect this call to the Vice President Johnson. Vice P. President Johnson is very busy at the moment. I don't care how busy he is at this moment. I am the President and I'd like to have a word with Johnson." "Very well, sir. I don't have time for this. If you want to get cocky to Johnson, then be my guest," she replied and connected the call. Vice President Johnson had just sat down behind of his desk when his phone started to ring. Without hesitation he answered. Maybe it would be someone from NASA who would have located Jack's body parts. "Are you sitting comfortably in your chair?" he heard from the other end of the line. "Mr. President Johnson," gasped. He recognized that voice. "You don't sound too pleased, sir. We are all in shock after we learned what happened up there." Johnson hurried to explain. "I am still alive, so don't plan any overtaking just yet," President Kennedy advised. "Sir, how can you even suspect me of doing so? I know you, Lyndon, and first of all I want to speak with the First Lady and then my brother Bobby, sir. She is in very delicate state of mind just now, and get the First Lady on the phone. God damn it, right away, sir." Tears of sadness changed to joy when Jackie heard her husband's voice. Bobby has also been set free from isolation and he was listening the phone call with Vice President Johnson. "My God, Jack, are you alright? What happened there?" Jackie asked through her tears. "Yes, I am. It's a long story, but I will tell you everything when I get back. When will you come back?" "I will return as soon as I can, but I need to deal one matter first." "What could be more important than coming back to your family?" Jackie asked frantically. "There is so much in stake that I cannot wrap my head around it either." "Listen, Jackie, this is very important. I am needed in here for a bit longer. I don't like it either, but this is something I have to do." Jackie bit her teeth tightly together. She had so much of anger and sadness in her heart, but she pushed it away. "Jackie, are you there?" President Kennedy asked. "Yes, Jack," she answered and wiped a tear from her cheek. "How is our little princess?" "She is in her bed asleep." "Good, you should go to bed as well." Jackie nodded and replied, "All right, love you." "I love you too, Jack." Then the connection was lost. As the First Lady put down the phone, Vice President Lyndon Johnson waited impatiently what she would say. "Now, Mr. Johnson, if you ever try to command me without clear evidence that my husband is dead, I will rip your head off." Vice President Johnson stayed silent, and Bobby tried to hide his laughter. "Did I make myself clear?" "Yes, Mom." After long hours of patient concentration and mental exercises, President Kennedy was nowhere near of knowing what Captain Catito had hidden into his ureth. President Kennedy had seen the captain's family's vivid memories reaching as far as 20 generations. He had seen their families humble origins and how they had climbed up in social ladder generation after generation. He had seen their family's almost entire history, triumphs, losses, tragedies and dramas. Each new generation brought something new into their family's fabric which seemed never to repeat itself. Every new host learned greatly from the mistakes of his predecessor, so the new host had a greater advantage on his side when he would face a situation which the previous host had already faced and learned from it. Trindles didn't need books as tools of learning. All the experiences were transported to another, via this amazing creature. In President Kennedy's mind, that was an excellent method of teaching, since the memories had stayed uncorrupted and were as fresh as they had happened only a few minutes ago. He was greatly impressed by Earth's capacity to storage so many lifetimes into its fragile body. Trindles had set themselves free from painstaking cycle of trial and error, which was very remarkable. As President Kennedy was reaching more recent generations, he learned that there was a little girl in the Trindles' home planet waiting for the captain's return. She was his only child and the heiress of her father's Earth. Seeing that little girl waving at her father as Nulmiria departed, President Kennedy couldn't help feeling sorry for the girl. She would never see her father again. "Have you found what the captain had seen yet?" Dumas asked. President Kennedy's heart missed one beat when he heard Dumas' voice. The Thede had appeared to his bedside soundlessly, or he had been so deep in his thoughts that he hadn't heard him entering the clinic. "No, not yet. I must confess I am a little lost in all these memories. It's not like I could just open the table of contents and pick whatever memory I'd like. It's like trying to hold together a flooding dam with a tape. It's normal. Your species haven't adapted into this kind of mental stimulation. It took centuries even from the Trindles to perfect their ability to control these beings." President Kennedy sighed heavily and rubbed his forehead. "My head is so full of past lifetimes. It's so hard to put them into order. It may also be difficult because the captain's death wasn't a natural passing. The sudden loss of the host may have shocked the Earth as well, and it is trying to isolate those memories connected to the source of trauma," Dumas concluded. "How we could undo that isolation? Cannot you take this thing out from my head by surgically? It is not recommended to separate Earth from its host with such a violent way. It would do permanent damage to the both of you. Then what do you suggest?" Dumas crossed his hands behind of his back and walked while he thought. "There is one way what we could use to dig out that buried treasure, so to speak. What may that be? If you agree to it, you must trust me fully." "All right, I trust you. Then let me conduct a hypnotic session to you." President Kennedy gave a slightly skeptical look to Dumas. "Hypnosis, you said?" "Yes. With all respect, isn't that a bit of a nonsense? Don't be so skeptical, Mr. President. You have nothing to lose. And besides, we will not let you go before we know what the captain was hiding. We cannot take that chance that it is something really important." President Kennedy knew that Dumas was right. If that information was something so valuable that other aliens were willing to kill for it, then it must be kept in good hands. "Very well then. Do your worst," he agreed. Dumas dimmed the lights of the clinic even further when it was almost pitch black. Then he turned the soft humming sound to alpha frequency, which would ease up his task. "Now, close your eyes and take deep breath and comfortable position." President Kennedy did what he was being told, and Dumas started to guide him to a deep trance. Imagine that you are standing on the top of a staircase, and each step you take you will go deeper and deeper into calm, relaxing feeling. Dumas waited for a few minutes before he continued. "Slow steps. Take your time. You are in no hurry. Take a nice deep breath, hold it for a while and then let it out. Relax your whole body. Let all stress and tension leave from your muscles. Let your mind be at ease, and let yourself sink into this wonderful feeling of relaxation." Again, Dumas waited and observed his patient. With his third eye he could see how President Kennedy's body temperature dropped a little. When his heart started to beat slower, his joints relaxed and his breathing became steadier. Dumas repeated his words of relaxation one more time, before he started to seek the hidden information. Now, I remember you're saying that Earth showed you numerous lifetimes. I would like you to go into the life of Captain Cotito. He is about to leave from his home planet towards Earth. What happened during that flight? As the numerous years of past life memories flashed through President Kennedy's eyes, he finally reached that carefully locked away memory about Namiria's departure. He was able not just to see the memory, but also to feel the endless longing of that planet which Captain had left behind. Somehow the Captain had known that this would be his final voyage, but he had kept his thoughts to himself. Where are you now? Dumas asked. I am at the bridge of the ship and we are flying across the space. Are there others with you or are you alone? My crew is in here with me. What else is happening? The lookout says that he has found something. What has he found? He says it is a new planet which we haven't marked yet. What happens next? I tell the engines to stop, and I take a closer look of this planet. Is this planet special in some way? Yes, it is. As I take a closer look, I notice that it is a carbon planet in a thinly populated solar system with only 5 her planets. As I look at it, I call it as Eternium. Eternium is about 2.1 times bigger than Earth, and its gravity is about 1.10 times that of Earth. A single day lasts 44.38 hours and a year lasts 302 days. The planet is made up of 4 continents, which make up 75% of the planet's landmass. 4 moons orbit the planet and Eternium itself orbits an orange sun in a wide, elliptic orbit. The plant-like organisms on this planet are mostly small shrubs, flowers and grasses, all of which have spectacular colors, but they tend to remain quite small. Trees are spread thinly, but they tend to grow very wide, allowing them to store plenty of nutrients for when their smaller species bloom and take most of the nutrients in the ground. While their colors, shapes and in some cases their scents may be wonderful, none of these organisms have developed beyond a more basic form. Some are on the right path, but it will take a while before we can see thorned or poisonous species on this planet. Just like the surface, the underwater world doesn't have much more to offer than basic plants. While they do play an important role in many of the planet's ecosystems, they're not that spectacular to look at. While the intelligent life forms on this planet are technologically advanced and it's still uncertain what they know or think they know about the universe, they are quite advanced. Nonetheless, their current stage can be compared roughly to that of the late ancient Egyptians. But only in terms of progress. Their societies are completely different, as they tend to live in harmony with one another. This is mostly due to the species' lack of strong emotions, which has developed over millions of years without a real natural enemy, besides diseases. Deep inside of this planet is a massive deposit of Canaanite. When President Kennedy mentioned the deposit of Canaanites, Dumas understood why the Zadsons had attacked. Canaanite was one of the 4 basic ingredients which they used to fuel their warships. If they would get their hands onto that planet's coordinates, they would surely rip it apart to get every last crumb of Canaanite and they would destroy its inhabitants in the process. Dumas knew that their alliance needed to take this planet under their protection. All he needed were the coordinates of this planet, where it locates. This Eternium. Pensive wrinkle appeared onto President Kennedy's forehead while he tried to remember. It locates in the constellation of Orictolagus. As soon as he had revealed the location, Dumas informed the space station's captain about the existence of this planet. The captain sent an urgent message to their headquarters, warning them about the potential Zadson threat to this new world. Besides the warning, she also informed the Trindles that one of their Earths had latched itself into a human being, and therefore the doctors of the station asked further advice, how to safely remove it. Indles answered quickly. They advised the Thadaes to send President Kennedy into their planet, where they could perform the separation safely. Will it hurt? President Kennedy asked when Dumas delivered him the message. I must confess, I don't know. We have no precedent about this kind of case. However, I suspect that the elders of the ruling tribe want to take you to one of their sacred fountains, where the Earth came to be. Dumas speculated. Will you come with me, President? Kennedy inquired. Yes, as a scientist, I am curious to see what will happen. I hope you don't consider me just as a germ under your microscope. Of course not, Mr. President. As soon as all the necessary preparations had been made, a small spaceship was launched towards the Trindle's home planet, Istromia. During the flight, President Kennedy thought feverishly what he would say to the captain's daughter. He wondered if she was still under the impression that her father would see home back. According to the Space Navy's protocol, all crew members who had died in the space were launched into its vast emptiness. There was no room for corpses in a spaceship. Soon they reached Istromia and a warm feeling of homecoming filled President Kennedy's mind. However, he scolded himself for such odd feelings. This planet was not his home. It was only because he had this strange creature in his head which created these feelings. He felt how it absorbed more and more of his identity into its coils, which he didn't like one bit. The sooner he would get rid of it, the better. We just found out that there was a traitor among the Nulmiria's crew, who leaked the information to the Zadsons. How we can be sure that we can trust onto this human? The leader of the elders asked when President Kennedy was presented to them. Many of his people did die as well in that attack. He is not to be blamed. Dumas defended the president. We know, but it is so hard to us to understand. What madness made the Captain Catido to grant his Earth to a human? It seems that he had no other choice, because if he hadn't, the planet with a Canaanite would totally be on the mercy of the Zadson invaders. Dumas pointed out. That is true, but this was a sacrilege and a violation of our culture. With all respect, I wasn't consulted about this affair either, if that would make you feel less violated, President Kennedy remarked. The elders looked at the president with a slight despise in their eyes. Dumas had warned him that they might see him as an abomination, but President Kennedy didn't let that bother himself. Besides, we don't have any time left for petty disagreements. The Earth must be taken out from the president and give it to the captain's daughter, Dumas argued, when he realized that the elders didn't want anything more than just to roll in self-pity. His comments seemed to snap them out from their contempt, and they returned to the matter at hand. Yes, according to our old laws, if a person doesn't want to keep the Earth, it must be returned back to one of the sacred pools underneath, the leader replied. The elders took President Kennedy and Dumas deep underground. As they were walking down the stone steps, strange feeling overtook the president. How are you feeling? Dumas asked when he sensed a change in President Kennedy. Everything feels so twirling, he replied. The Earth is now sensing that it is coming closer to its home and it might be preparing itself for departing from you, Dumas explained. Soon they had reached the end of the steps and they entered into an enormous underground cave. In the middle of the cave was vast milky white lake where random columns of steam were rising up towards the stony ceiling. As President Kennedy was looking at the lake before him, a little girl appeared from the shadowy corner. Are you the one who was with my father when he died? The girl asked. The PR. Essendon turned to look at the girl and replied, yes, I was. Was he brave? Very much so. I wish I could have seen him one more time. The girl whispered with broken voice. I know, and I wish I could comfort you by saying that your grief will pass, but it doesn't. You just learn to live with it. However, your father left his entire life's memories to you. Are you ready to claim your inheritance? The girl looked at President Kennedy and nodded. Then they started the separation ritual. Dumas supported President Kennedy behind of his neck while he floated on the warm water. The captain's daughter was floating next to him and soon the President Kennedy felt something moving inside of himself. The Earth was on move and slowly it crawled out from the president's right ear. As the creature left, his intense headache finally gave in, and he was able to focus his thoughts once again. From the corner of his eye, the president saw how Earth swam towards the girl and took its place inside of her mind. Separation was done, and entry to new hostess had begun. The captain's daughter was taken under the protection of the Thedes, since she was now the keeper of all the information of that Canaanite planet. And as a fortunate bonus, she also had access to the life on Earth through a short span of President Kennedy's life. In the end, President Kennedy was returned back to the White House by the 3 days.